Hello, and welcome to Storytime Sunday. Today we will be reading from the book Pioneers, Places, and Predicaments by B. Lorenzen. Turning to page number 98, this is the story of Johnny Burrasa, Peace River's own Lost on the Barrens. The Burrasas came west from Montreal to Fort Vermilion, Alberta in the 1800s. Upon arriving in the north, the family was affiliated with the Northwest Company of Fur Traders, and Louis carried the mail up and down the Peace for years. He was named a member of the Order of the British Empire by King George V, honoring his work as a pioneer river pilot. Unfortunately, the man died of a heart attack at Keg River at the very time of hearing of the award. Louis's sons, Johnny and Arthur, continued on and completed the mail contract after his death. The mail was carried by boat on the Peace River in summer and by dog team and horse and sleigh in the winter. Johnny worked with his father and learned to love the outdoors and the animals he worked with. Dogs were his passion, and he was known for his love of the animals and the care he took of them. In 1942, he joined the Air Force, and during his war years earned the DCF and BAR in recognition of his bravery and consideration for his crew and fellow pilots while flying the war zones of Europe. Previous to joining the Air Force, he and Mary Purcell had married and started their family, a daughter Myrna and a son John Jr., known as Jack. Upon returning home after the war ended, he found that jobs were scarce, but eventually found employment as a bush pilot flying for Peace River Northern, as well as any other lines in the area who may need help. The pay was not great. Pilots at that time were paid by the mile and the pound, but he was doing what he loved most. Flying a small aircraft in the north at that time was almost as dangerous as flying warplanes over Berlin during the wartime. By 1951, Johnny had logged over 10,000 hours flying time in the north and was now flying for Yellowknife Airways Limited. He had moved his family to Yellowknife, and life was pretty good for them. His children were growing up, and he was able to spend time with them. It seemed that he was exactly where he wanted to be. On the day of his final flight, he had flown a Balanca, CFEQ, to Bathurst Inlet and planned to switch planes there with company co-owner Ernie Boffa and return to Yellowknife flying a Norseman Mark, CFBNV. Ernie would be flying a group of botanists further north in the Balanca. Neil Murphy, lifelong friend of Johnny's, originally from Peace River, was now working as an apprentice aviation engineer and had moved to Yellowknife. Neil was scheduled to fly with Johnny that day, but at the last minute a change of plans sent him on another job. Neil had packed the maps and his rifle in the Norseman. On arriving at Bathurst Inlet, another change of plan took place. Ernie went on north with the Norseman, and Johnny set out to return to Yellowknife with Balanca. The rifle and maps stayed in the Norseman. Neil had trapped on the Barrens for 12 years and had had a lot of bush experience. With his survival skills and mechanical expertise, he was a good assistant to have along. I believe that Neil feels that perhaps if circumstances had not changed, the original flight plan, and he had traveled with Johnny, the results of the trip may have turned out differently. It was a known fact that Johnny was not great with directions and did not have a lot of experience in land travel in the north. The flight from Bathurst Inlet was scheduled to stop at Salmita Mines. The weather was not great in that area, the weather was not great in the area that day, so when Burrasa's plane did not return when expected, everyone believed that he had probably sat down somewhere and was waiting for the skies to clear. There had been previous trouble with the Balanca's batteries going dead, and maybe he couldn't get the plane started again. May 20th. When Norseman pilot Ernie Boffa returned from Spence Bay, he informed Yellowknife Airways office that Johnny had not arrived at Salmita Mine. The search began immediately by Yellowknife Airways, and was joined very quickly by Search and Rescue, and a bit later by the RCAF. June 17th. The search was called off. August 31st, 1951. A USAF plane flying east of Great Slave Lake in the Holdea Lake area, searching for a lost aircraft, spotted a downed plane. 118 days after its disappearance, Johnny's plane was found on the shore of Holdea Lake, 325 miles east of Yellowknife. The many hours of searching from the air had been over in the wrong direction. Neil Murphy had mapped a grid that would cover that area, but it had been ignored. Neil knew Johnny real good. They should have listened. Inside the plane was a note that Barossa had left, informing the finder that he had left the plane on Wednesday, May 23rd. He had stayed with the plane for 5 days after landing. He intended to walk in a northwesterly direction, believing that it would take him to Great Slave Lake. He had 2 weeks' rations, if used sparingly, maybe 3. He said to watch for smoke signals, so it was believed that he had matches. He said that he had repaired the clock, but it was not reliable. His bedroll had been left at the plane. Northern ground search crews were called in, and this crew included Neil Murphy. Neil and crew started from the plane, walking in a circle, and soon found evidence of the direction he had taken. They also found evidence of where he had spent the first night. From then on, there was very little solid evidence of his path. A peeled log was found washed up on a shore that had led them to believe it may have been used as a raft, but no real evidence of proof that it may have been Johnny's. May 1952. The order of presumption of death was authorized. The death certificate stated, due to exposure or drowning, and was issued December 15th, 1952. Mary Barossa and her little family of Myrna and John Jr., Jack, were left to carry on with their lives alone. There was no real closure to the death of their husband and father. There were many theories of what happened, as there are always in the case of a mysterious disappearance. Neil Murphy's explanation probably tells the story's ending better than most. Neil says, Johnny got lost. This statement probably says it all and is most believable for anyone traveling in the lands of lakes, rivers, rocks, and muskeg with no compass, no maps, and not a lot of real ground bush experience. That's all for this week. See you next Sunday.